Well met, fellow adventurers, I'm Pruitt. And this is Jim Davis. And today we're going to be talking about golems and constructs. Can always build a better adventure.
You can always build a better adventure with constructs.
Let's talk about golems. Talk about golems, things built, things created.
Things built, elemental spirits bound in material form.
Yeah.
Golems are one of those monsters in Dungeons and Dragons that I use as like a benchmark for party power. When can the party reliably overcome, say, a clay golem or an iron golem or a stone golem and they not break a sweat?
Right.
Tend to use them as a benchmark monster, certainly throw them into encounters where they're appropriate, or maybe they're guarding something, or the creation of a spellcaster or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I like them just because they're a consequence-free monster. And sometimes you want that as a DM, particularly if you're running a type of game where not all orcs are evil, and not all goblins are supposed to be killed, and maybe that red dragon, you can form an alliance with it.
Yeah.
The golem is a nice, like, just wail on this thing, and don't worry about the consequences.
It's just a construct. It's just a thing that was built to do a task. Doesn't have any sentience of its own.
Right.
So yeah, don't feel bad.
Don't feel bad.
Just rip it apart.
Beat up on the golem. And so I think that...
golems have rights too, Jim.
Well, in certain settings they do, certainly.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that. But I think that it's sort of tantalizingly within the player's reach.
Yeah.
There's the manual of golems in the monster manual. It's one of those things where higher level characters or a very dedicated character can aspire to attain one of these things for itself. That's always been what's fascinating about the golems for me, is because they're a monster that you could potentially have on your side. They tend to be really beefy, really tough.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like them for what they are, the simplicity of them.
Yeah, there's nothing like having a sack full of hard-hitting hit points to throw at something.
Right.
Just following you around.
Just following you around.
At all times.
Yeah.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of building these things. So, clay golems.
Clay golem is, of course, inspired by the myth of the story of the Golem of Prague, and I hope I didn't mess that up in any way. People are going to get upset with me about it. But anyway, it's sort of inspired by Jewish mythology about sort of this clay golem. It sort of has a word written on its forehead. And so there's the D&D golem takes that and sort of says they're divinely inspired or divinely powered. Used to be in second edition, like only priests could create clay golems. Yeah. And so that's sort of the legacy of this monster in Dungeons and Dragons. And so maybe clay golems are sort of guarding a temple, or you can use them in that respect to sort of play up that connection with the real world. My thing with all the golems is that they say they're powered by the spirits of elemental earth. Right. I was going to ask you about that. Like, all by elemental earth? That's what the Monster Manual says. Monster Manual says, okay, they're all powered by elemental earth, and they all sort of inhabit this host or vessel that the spellcaster creates for it. But I kind of see how each golem is tied to a different element. And so for me, clay is tied with water. It's just one of those things where you have to have water to sort of shape clay. So thematically it fits. In a mechanical sense, they've got this sort of immunity to acid. Sort of like that's where their defenses lies. So it sort of ties with that with the water element there. I see all of the golems as being attuned to a specific element, not just earth. Right. And so it's a way that you can maybe kind of change it up and have it be that the creation of this thing involves tracking down the elemental spirit that you're going to bind to it. And depending on what kind of spellcaster you are you coercing that spirit into the host? Are you bargaining with it and saying like, hey, power this this host that I have for you in exchange for something like that? And so it's ways that the creation of a golem, if you want to let your players sort of go down that path, doesn't have to be just like spend the 65,000 gold pieces on it and then you're done. You can make it more of a role-playing encounter. Yeah, you got to go find a willing spirit to inhabit this thing. Yeah. So would you say then that flesh might be either like air, like electricity or air spirit to breathe life back into this flesh? That's what I do. And so it's the same way. I see it thematically as the air breathes life back into the body, and the fact that lightning animates it. And so Flesh Golem is, of course, Frankenstein's monster. It would be a fun D&D character to make Dr. Frankenstein, right? And that's your whole goal. Yeah, the Flesh Golem fits in with necromancy and animating dead. It's a different way to animate a corpse, so it's sort of like if you want to have a necromancer or a certain kind of plot where dead bodies are being stolen and being used for something that the obvious sort of red herring is it's a necromancer or a ghoul or something like that.
It's the necromancer on the edge of town that keeps getting blamed.
He's like, I'm just sitting here.
I'm just sitting over here. I only do animals.
We don't do anything. I just animate your pets.
You asked me to do that.
Do it. And so, no, it's the crafty, artificer off in his tower who's creating his flesh golem over there. And so. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with that. People who are upset that their loved ones are being used to create flesh golems, or maybe you go an opposite route, and it's an honor to be turned into a flesh golem. It means that you were met a certain standard of physical perfection in order for your body parts to be used after you're dead.
Right.
And so I keep dancing around Eberron. Right.
Yeah,
we're gonna eventually get to Eberron and sort of the Warforged and everything, but there's something about one of the kingdoms in Eberron where they kind of feel that way about death. It's like it's an honor to serve in the zombie legions.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe you have an organization or something that where you donate yourself to become a flesh golem afterwards, and they're carefully created and crafted and lovingly preserved.
Yeah,
corpse monsters.
You have amazing eyesight, so when you pass on, your eyes will be used in the crafting of this golem.
Right, and so particularly with the clay and the flesh golems, I see them as these are the two monsters of all the golems that deserve sentience in some way. First off, they're the only two that can go berserk, where their elemental spirits can sort of slip their bonds and go berserk if they meet certain conditions. And so I kind of like to see it as, what if you, this sort of contradicts ourselves for what we said earlier of consequence-free monsters.
Well.
But what if you decided as a DM, like, yeah, that elemental spirit that powers this thing is totally free-willed, and the magic that was used to bind it has corroded. It's been standing here for 1,000 years, and now it
wants to go stretch its legs.
It wants to go stretch its legs, do something else. It doesn't want to fight you.
You come across a golem. What kind of golem? It's a flesh golem. Is it attacking? No, it's just going for a walk.
It's just going for a walk, painting a picture. And so I think that those are things that you can do if you're looking to, say, subvert the player's expectations or throw something at them that's a little different or a little weird. A flesh golem contemplating the meaning of life is certainly something that can be. Maybe it's a memorable encounter, maybe your players will be bored by it, but it's certainly within the realm of what you can do.
Well, I mean, that's the story of, isn't that the whole point of Dr. Frankenstein's monster is we're scared of the own horror within ourselves?
Yeah, and so I mean, like, whether or not you want to dig that deep in your D&D game is one thing, but it is an option there for you. The other two golems, Iron.
Yeah.
Iron is probably my favorite of them. It's just a big, dumb robot that fights. Because fire is sort of their element that they're tied to, there's a lot of nasty things you can do with an iron golem that you might not be able to do with other monsters. So you can have the iron golem standing on a glyph of an inward-focused wall of fire. And so in order to get to it, the players have to deal with the fact that they've got to stand next to the iron golem, deal with the wall of fire. It's healing the golem all the while. Those are sort of tricks you can do because of the fact that fire magic is so prevalent to common, and it is beneficial to the iron golem. They're already tough, strong, and so giving them something that that sort of triggers that. So in the same way that, like, if you're fighting if you've got a wizard and his flesh golem creature, that it's going to maybe shoot lightning at it occasionally in order to sort of heal it. Do the same thing with the iron golem and use that synergy between their spell immunities and in the environment that they're fighting in to make those encounters memorable.
Give your iron golem a bunch of alchemist fire.
Right.
Just to drop on itself.
Just to drop on itself, yeah. Cover it in grease and set it on fire before you get out there. So I think that those are the kinds of things you can do with your monsters. And when the DMG or when you read an advice blog about mixing up or creating environmental challenges for your players, golems are one of those where it's like, what if you had a scenario where there's a golem and then there are a couple of glyphs of warding that create a force bubble and a cloud kill. And so you're now trapped in the force bubble, the wall of force, with the cloud kill and the golem that doesn't care that there's a cloud kill there. And so
you can't disperse it.
You can't disperse it.
There's nowhere for it to go.
There's nowhere for it to go. Did you have a teleport spell or a disintegrate? You can get out of that wall of force. Otherwise, you got to fight it in the cloud kill. And so I think that those are ways to use sort of spells, particularly Glyph of Warding, to create those kind of play environments. But you can do it with plenty of other things, you know. Do you have a monster lair that's deep in a volcano? Then they can have iron golems there. A scenario where you're trying to stop the flesh golem from being created as the thunderstorm rages all around you and lightning strikes randomly, and you don't want that golem to be hit by it, but he's covered in metal tines that are designed to attract the lightning to it. So those are the kinds of things you can do with golems. I find them that they lend themselves very well towards having a weird environment, of fighting a stone golem underwater.
Well, yeah, look, that's the last one we need to get to. Stone golems. They're the earth spirit, though.
They're the earth spirit. They're obviously
right there
the
in
earth
the
spirit.
name.
If I'm going to keep dividing them up, they're stone golems. And I think that for me, stone golem is a great base monster that you can completely reskin. So any statue that you have can potentially be a stone golem. And in high magical societies, I'm thinking like the Drow of Menzoberranzan, of course, is one of those. But other highly magical societies that have a high proportion of spellcasters in them, maybe every statue around town is animate in some way. That the gargoyles that stand on, that stand watch on the tower are actually animated statues, whether they're stat-wise gargoyles or stat-wise stone golems. Is up to the DM, but that's sort of the purpose of them.
They're just up there cleaning the pigeon poop off the ledges.
Yeah.
And also, whatever you do when you go through that society, don't blink.
Don't blink, no.
If you blink, you're dead.
Yes. So I think that
anyway,
you can do that with a stone golem. There's nothing saying that you can't like recreate the weeping angels and have them all be stone golems that just strangle you and send you back in time.
Have a teleporting power.
Right.
that teleports you through time and space.
So
feeds off that energy.
And so I think that that's the kind of thing you can do with constructs, is because they don't need to breathe, they don't need they don't need the normal functions for life. You can have weird environments that you have to fight them in, creating an additional challenge for the party. And at the same time, because they have an elemental spirit bound to them, there is an opportunity for some kind of role play interaction, maybe with the flesh and clay more than iron and stone. But what happens if you take that elemental spirit out of the stone golem and free it?
Yeah.
Is there a way to do that? Is there a ritual or is it just take a high level dispel magic?
They're swimming under in a lake or something, and they come across like some ancient wizard or king's terracotta soldiers lined up on the floor of this
flooded valley.
And they're like, oh, these are kind of awesome. Then all the heads just turn and look up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I would shit my pants in the water.
Yeah.
And then it'd be obscured.
The monster is really iconic, and there's a lot of different things you can do with it. And even like making it a part of the setting. So when I think golems, I immediately also think of Warforged from Eberron.
Well,
and they are the sort of quintessential to me low-powered golem, in that you can put one in your campaign or feature them in your campaign. You don't have to worry about it being super unbalanced. But at the same time, they have that spark of sentience that makes them suitable for being a player character, and also complicates things a bit, because it's like, hey, if Warforged exist on your planet, are they treated like other sentient beings?
Well, are they second-class citizens?
Are they second-class citizens? And so that's one of the things about Eberron that I like, that the gray area that they create in D&D, the fact that Warforged are there, that they're tireless workers, that they're veterans of this last war. There's these great elements that exist alongside the Warforged, that when you take them out of Eberron, it's worthwhile thinking like, okay, well, maybe what does it look like to have one of these, one of these play races in my campaign world?
Are your cantinas going to serve their kind or not?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. And so, or are they unique? Are they utterly unique? Is this something like...
no one's seen this.
No one's seen this before. Maybe, if you're using Warforged in the Forgotten Realms, it's like because they're a special creation of Gond, or those Lantan, or whatever island it is off the Sword Coast, where they sort of worship the god of invention.
It's the Gondish priests, right?
Yeah.
Create fire powder or whatever.
Smoke powder.
Smoke powder.
Yeah. And so maybe you have it like that, and it's sort of like a one of a kind, unique, utterly amazing thing that just happens to be a player character, and then they're dealing with that.
Right. Well, in my Spelljammer campaign, your brother played Bezalel.
Bezalel, yeah.
A transmuter warforged, and that when he showed up, everyone was like,
What's going on? Yeah.
Where's your wizard controlling this iron golem? You know?
Right.
But we played it up like that. I love how he played him like a child.
Right.
Like bluntly innocent.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, like, I liked how he role played that, so it kind of set people at ease because they were like, "Oh, you don't even know what's going on.
You don't even know what's happening." I think that was a fun way to approach the character sort of type, and the fact that it was like, well, okay, who created me? Are there more of my kind? And so that's what I like about the Warforged, because they have the potential for being unique without necessarily being like something that's going to overshadow the rest of the party.
Right.
It's not like it was in 3rd edition where they have a host of immunities and everything that sort of make them really a no-brainer choice if you have the option for it, or DMs accidentally having to worry about an all Warforged party and the challenges and complications that lends towards traditional Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah.
The kind of things that an all Warforged party could do.
You come to a river, we walk across the bottom.
We walk across the bottom of it. We don't need to eat? Okay, we're not going to worry about it. In terms of just stat-wise Warforged, we have 2 options. There's the one that was in the Unearthed Arcana, the first Unearthed Arcana, actually, for 5th edition. And then there's Keith Baker's actual Warforged, which is on his blog, where he blogs about Eberron. And if you're a fan of Eberron or you're curious about it, I recommend reading his blog. It's really great.
It's a lot of fun. The 2 options, the Scout and the
Scout, and then I forget what the other option's called. So it gives you sort of some flexibility. One of them's strength-based, one of them's dexterity-based.
Yeah.
And that's sort of in fitting with 3rd edition Eberron. As a setting overall, Eberron is one of those settings where constructs play a huge role in it, not just Warforged, but sort of other types. And so I think that it's worth looking at how Eberron approaches creating these monsters in a certain environment that can give inspiration to a lot of DMs, and check them out.
Most definitely. Now, you have used the word constructs a few times.
Yeah.
Is it worth mentioning Shield Guardians?
It's worth mentioning Shield Guardians. I mean, Shield Guardians
they're a lot of fun.
They're really fun, and they're kind of a cousin to Golems, and even other constructs like helmed horrors or animated suits of armor can function in a similar way. Golems are just kind of the apex of this sort of pyramid of constructs.
Right.
So Shield Guardians are great for any kind of spellcaster that wants to add some durability and some survivability to itself.
Just have a no bullshit, no lip bodyguard.
Yeah.
It just sits there quietly.
It just sits there quietly. I mean, to me, I look at them and I go, why wouldn't my Lich that I've got as the main focus of the game feature a Shield Guardian pretty heavily?
Or 2.
Or why not? Along with their Death Slot that they're using. So I mean, like, those are the kinds of things that you can do with a Shield Guardian. Of course, at the same time, if you've got a Shield Guardian in your campaign, then you need to be prepared for the possibility that the players are going to go, we're going to keep that. Like, we're going to steal that amulet and we're going to keep it and control the Shield Guardian for ourselves.
Yeah. See, now that's one of the loose ends in the Spelljammer campaign.
It was one of the loose ends.
Y'all jacked a dude's Shield Guardian, but he made away with the amulet.
But he made away with the amulet, so we had to keep the Shield Guardian in an anti-magic field, just to be sure. The Spelljammer campaign is one of those where we also dealt with constructs a lot. So because Bez was a Warforged transmuter, he was making homunculi.
Yeah.
He was making his own flesh golem.
Yeah.
If I recall, he was making his own flesh golem so he could transfer his consciousness to it and have a physical body. Something like that. Josh was very tight-lipped as what he was doing in his laboratory.
I'm pretty sure he had a brief conversation with me about that.
Yeah.
And it was just a thing that he might want to do in the future. But yeah, I always imagined Bezalel's shop, or his little workshop on whichever ship he was on. I can't remember if it was the New Horizons or
his New Ventures.
New Ventures,
yeah.
The bigger one, yeah. But I just imagine just all the time just power tools and random cat screeches for some reason, and it's
just going on in the background.
Just going on in the background like 24/7.
Yeah.
Except for his 4 hours where he's powered down.
Where he's powered down, doing his own, studying his spell book or whatever it was. And even homunculi are one of those kinds of creatures, and I know that he created one, and it would be gross and weird, and kind of moving around. But they're a construct that's available to the party. Perhaps if you have a wizard or something that would rather have one of those as a familiar than an owl or a bat or something, consider letting them have one of those, or even a warlock maybe instead of an imp or a quasit. So it's just. They're weird monsters, constructs, and particularly golems. And there's a lot you can do with them, and I don't know. Have fun with them, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Trav has his headphones on. He can't hear that we're done.
He can't hear that we're done.
So we're just going to waste a bunch of film just talking about bullshit.
Yep.
Nothing in particular.
Nothing in particular. I'm going to actually look up homunculus.
I'm going to have a drink of my chai. It's been, was it noon?
Is it noon?
That's 10 till.
Homunculus.
Still hot.
Still hot.
Telling you, man, thermodynamics. Heat not traveling through a vacuum very well is a great thing.
It's a great thing.
Hey, we've just been bullshitting for a couple minutes.
Cool. Intro.